I'm a PhD student from Tilburg University, and my topic taps into everything that we discussed so far. And yeah, so maybe we can have an interesting discussion afterwards. So, the presentation is about educational polarization and attitudes. Short introduction to the topic. The idea is that due to globalization, we also heard the theory of modernization, that these processes have caused winners and losers, and this could be based on education. So the lower educated would be the losers who are disadvantaged by all these processes, all these developments, and the higher educated who take advantage of this in all kinds of dimensions, politically, economically, etc. Yeah, so the idea is that because globalization is only increasing, that also these attitudes will drive further apart, so that there will be attitudinal polarization between educational groups. Yeah, so some words on polarization. What is this, and what does it mean? What does it entail? First of all, we consider it a process. You can also see it as a state, but we are interested in these developments over time, so we see it as a process. And the most obvious manifestation would be the between group differences. So these groups are moving apart from each other in their attitudes. But there's also another kind of understudied factor, and that is these within group differences. So this homogeneity within these educational groups in our case. And here we see a figure of between group polarization, so the distributions are moving apart. But what you can see here is this is claimed to be high polarization. But if this homogeneity within these groups would also increase, there would be no overlap anymore between these distributions. So this within group homogeneity is also an important factor to study. And there are two other kinds of manifestations of polarization that we do not really study that are interesting for the discussion later on. So first of all, alignment. Alignment is the idea that people align their ideas and their attitudes about all kinds of different topics to fit one certain identity. So for example, the cosmopolitan identity that we talked about. And then the second one is subjective polarization. First of all, perceived, the extent to which people think that polarization is taking place, and on the other hand, affective. So how do opposite groups feel about each other? So for example, the lower educated have this idea that the higher educated are elitist, those feelings. But for now, we focus on the between group differences. Do they grow bigger? And the within group differences, are they becoming smaller? If this is the case, we would really talk about strong polarization among educational groups. So I don't want to go too much into the theory about the between group differences. It's quite established, and our case is the Netherlands, and we have seen in the other presentations that the Netherlands is quite high on values like homosexuality and those kind of things, so very tolerant. So it is quite established that in the beginning there were large educational differences on these kind of values. So when we talk about post-materialism, homosexuality, these differences used to be large, but over time, more recently, the idea is that these differences are not that big anymore, but that the educational differences are the largest in other kinds of values such as intolerance and political trust. And this leads to these hypotheses. So we think that these traditional values, educational groups have not grown apart anymore, but when it comes to intolerance and political trust, they are increasingly driving apart from each other. And I will not go into this either, but the idea is that this can be explained through three things. The first is the economic position, differences between the educational groups in cognitive resources, and differences in cultural capital. Well, and now it becomes interesting because these mechanisms can also be applied to the within differences, to the homogeneity within these groups. But there are kind of two opposing streams of literature, two arguments that are opposing each other for which group is more homogeneous. So on the one hand, there are scholars that say, well, it is the lower educated that are more homogeneous. Why? It's only a small group of people that is left that is lower educated because of educational expansion, way more people became higher educated, and that is the reason why those people that are kind of left at the bottom are more homogeneous in their attitudes. But on the other hand, we see this argument that the higher educated are more homogeneous. And we also heard this already a little bit in the other presentations, and this would be because the higher educated are increasingly connecting to other higher educated people. They have this feeling that they are part of a certain group, that they have to represent a certain identity. Those kinds of arguments, and also the socialization argument. Higher educated people spend longer time at school, so they are among other people with the same kind of culture. Yeah, so this would be an argument for why the higher educated people would be more homogeneous. Because this is contradicting to some extent, we just hypothesize that at least the homogeneity within this group have changed, but we don't know yet in what direction yet. So how did we do this? How did we test this? For, of course, EVS data, for the Dutch sample, for all weights that were available. Dependent variables, we look at 6 different kinds of dependent variables, and we divided them in these idea of traditional values and post-traditional values. The sample is a little bit smaller for some of the values because these questions were not available yet in the first wave. We looked at education. We did also a small robustness check with a different measure of education because, well, there are some things you can bring up against this. Then we look at the 3 mechanisms. This is because of income, differences in rotation, or cultural capital. And we control for cohort, gender, and mode of data collection. The way we measure this is with this heteroscedastic ordered probit model, so we can model the mean differences at the same time as the variance differences within these groups. What we see, I didn't want to put this huge table on, so I only have these descriptive figures. Yeah, in short, I can tell you what we found. So first of all, the higher educated, we see that in these traditional values, such as post-materialism, that the higher educated and the lower educated are actually growing more similar. They are becoming more similar in their attitudes, but there is no inner decrease in this homogeneity. Although we do see that the higher educated are more homogeneous. So this would be an argument for the right side of the argument that I just made in this block. We see some mediating things going on, not that much. There are more strong direct effects, but not that much mediation for the educational difference. For religiosity, we see kind of the same as also the traditional value, although we don't see an in or decrease in these differences. So the differences have been stable since 1981. And for moral permissiveness, so these are the questions about homosexuality, euthanasia, these items, we actually see a decrease in educational differences. So here we also see there's more overlap towards 2017, and we also see that the higher educated are increasingly homogeneous. So they all think increasingly similar about these issues. Same goes for gender roles, and we see here also a strong effect, same for other traditional values, for generational replacement. Then, when we go to the post-traditional values, so intolerance, we want to be a little bit careful with these conclusions because the measurement was not perfect. This is the question about who don't you want to have as your neighbor. But we do see that actually here the educational differences are somewhat increasing, so they are growing apart. And again, the higher educated are more homogeneous. And the same and very clear for political trust. So in these post-traditional values, the educational groups are growing apart. And again, we also see some of the mechanisms at play here. So this leads to the following conclusions. We indeed see that on these traditional values, educational differences are not increasing. In fact, they are decreasing. They're growing more similar. Except for religiosity, the differences are still stable. The post-traditional values, the educational groups are growing apart, indeed. Only with regard to the homogeneity, we don't really see something going on. The higher educated are overall more only see something going on with this moral permissiveness, the higher educated increasingly think alike in these issues. So this leads us to the conclusions, and here it becomes interesting because we also found something about this cohort effects. So we actually see that the younger cohorts are also a little bit more conservative again, a little bit more intolerant, and a little bit more less trusting, a little less trusting. But yeah, what can be going on? So we see in the beginning I said we have to look at both the between group differences and the within group differences. But we only see something going on for these between group differences at some levels. So overall, we would conclude that no polarization overall is taking place. But it doesn't mean that other kinds of polarization can be taking place. So for example, affective polarization. We also concluded, I didn't show that in the results, but we also concluded that the Dutch society as a whole becomes more homogeneous in these traditional values, but less in these post-traditional values. So this could mean that if there are some instances of people that don't have these progressive ideas, that this could instigate negative feelings about certain groups. So even though these groups are still quite similar to each other, this might raise these negative feelings about each other, even though this is only one incident, for example. So maybe alignment. We saw that the higher educated are more homogeneous, so indeed maybe they are aligning their attitudes to a certain cosmopolitan, higher educated identity. And then the mechanisms are quite interesting because we didn't see much of the mediation actually, but we did see some direct effects, especially of cognition, which we claimed in the theory section. Anomie is part of this, so the idea that there are no norms anymore in society, that people feel in a way that they have to find their, maybe also identity in some way again. And for the post-traditional values, we really saw this effect of cultural capital. So the feeling that, this elitism is going on in politics, for example. And this then leads us to the last conclusion. Is this cultural background really based on something like education, or is it more about generations, or cohorts? Because we indeed also saw that these younger cohorts are again a little bit less progressive and a little bit less